Hello, welcome to Science Chomp. Today we're going to be looking at classifying organisms, also known as taxonomy. Now, here are the important questions that we need to ask. So, what is it? Why is it important? Who came up with the idea? And let's start off with what is it? Now, the clue is kind of in the name. Taxon means group. And if you have more than one group, you call it taxa. So taxonomy, or classifying organisms, is a system of organization where living organisms can be grouped together based on similar characteristics. So let's have a look at a couple of examples. If we look at these things over here, we've got lots and lots of different taxa here, lots of different groups. So we need to split them up into different taxa. So the first taxon would be invertebrates. This spider and this ant. They're both invertebrates. They don't have a backbone. They have exoskeletons. You can group those together. Okay. We can also group the squirrel and the rat together. They would fall under the taxon of rodent. This cobra and this crocodile, they'd fall under the taxon of reptile. This cow and this wildebeest, they could be grouped together. They would fall under the taxon of bovine. And this kitten and this big cat over here, they're both cats, so that's a taxon of itself. So I've just grouped them together in different taxa. So get used to that name, taxonomy, taxa. It's all classifying organisms. Okay? Now, if you go here, why is it important? This is actually written down here on this PowerPoint, and I'll just read it out for you. It is important to categorize objects into groups by identifying common characteristics to allow scientists to identify, group, and properly name organisms via a standardized system. And it gives you a nice little picture here of vegetables in a supermarket. And I'll run with this idea for now. If you were in a supermarket and you wanted to buy, for example, chocolate, you wouldn't go searching for it where they sell the paper and pens. That wouldn't make any sense. You'd look for it in the confectionery aisle where they have sweets, biscuits, and crisps. Okay? And it's just a way of grouping things together so you can very quickly identify them and figure out their characteristics. Okay? Going back here, so we've done the first two. Who came up with the idea? And the eagle-eyed amongst you would have noticed this name over here, Linnaeus. Carolus Linnaeus. In the 1700s, he is the person that decided organisms need to be grouped together based on similar structures, but he only had 2 kingdoms. And over the next couple of hundred years, it kind of changed. This classification system, it changes quite a lot, and we call it systematics, okay? And currently we have 3 domains and 6 kingdoms, okay? So if you want to pause it and read it, you can, but I just kind of summarized it for you. So Carolus Linnaeus, he's the one that came up with it in the 1700s. He only had 2 kingdoms. And then over the next 200 years or so, it developed and developed and developed. And now we have 3 domains and we have 6 kingdoms. And our system is called systematics. So as I mentioned, you've got 3 domains and 6 kingdoms. Let's have a look at what it all means. So the domains are bacteria, archaea, and eukarya. Now, anything that you can see with your eyes is going to be a eukaryote. So if you can see like a little flower, that's a eukaryote. You can see a mushroom, that's a eukaryote. We are eukaryotes, okay? Anything that you cannot see with your eyes is either going to be a bacteria or an archaea, which is actually very similar to a bacterium. They just live in very extreme environments, okay? So, they are the domains. So we are in the domain eukarya, which means we are eukaryotes. Okay? Going down to kingdom, bacteria and archaea, even though they're domains, they're also kingdoms as well. But eukarya, they get split up into 4 different kingdoms. You got the protista kingdom, the fungi, the plantae, and the animalia. Now, protista or protists, these are amoeba. They're a little bit like bacteria, but they've got a slightly more complicated cell structure. Fungi, these are things like mushrooms and molds and things. Fungi, I'm sure you've seen them before. Plantae, these are plants, and it's not just plants, it includes trees as well, and grasses. So don't just think, they're limited to size, they're sort of not. And then animalia, anything that's an animal. We fall under the kingdom Animalia, the animal kingdom. Okay? So you can pause it, have a read down below if you wanted to. Okay? So let's have a look at, let's go back up to this thing again. We're now going to organize the taxa in the modern classification system. And we have these things here. You will need to know this. So it goes domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Okay? Domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Now, if you cannot remember this, you can use this sentence, this mnemonic sentence, to help you remember. So, dangerous King Philip cried out for goodness sake. Now, if you're in my class, you know I say this phrase quite often, for goodness sake, when someone does something wrong. But anyway, this guy here is King Philip. He is kind of dangerous. He probably killed a few people in his time. And he cried out, for goodness sake. Domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Now, what does this all mean? Okay. We're going to use this bear as an example. Okay, so we've got the domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. All of those taxonomic groups are listed on the side here. Now, at the very top, the eukarya, you've got the most amount of numbers of species, okay, 4 to 10 million species. And the idea is, as you go down the taxonomic group, the number of species decreases. And what we're doing is we are narrowing down the number until right at the very end, you've only got 1 species, obviously that we call the species, okay? So let's have a look at this example here, this grizzly bear. It's not a bacteria and it falls under the domain eukarya. That's kind of easy to understand. But in this domain, we've got all sorts of other things. We've got like protists and we've got plants and things. So we've got to put this into a kingdom. And he belongs in the animal kingdom. So anything which isn't an animal, we can get rid of. After that, you've got all these animals like this thing and this thing, and this, and they're all very different. Now, we can get rid of the most different ones, which are the invertebrates. So get rid of the invertebrates, and everything else in the phylum Chordata is a vertebrate, which means they have backbones. So this animal has a backbone, okay? Now you can see here we've got fish and birds as well, and fish and birds are nothing like this bear. So we can get rid of those because this thing is a mammal, and in the next thing, all we have are mammals. The thing is, mammals, you got lots and lots of different types, and one of these doesn't belong, and this squirrel doesn't belong because it's a vegetarian, okay? So the rest of them are in the order Carnivora. Yes, even the panda, even though the panda eats baboons, they were originally carnivores that just got lazy. So you just get rid of all these vegetarian animals. So these are all meant to be meat eaters, meant to be. Okay? Now, here, one of them doesn't belong. This animal here, this is a cat. The rest of them look like bears. So get rid of the cat and everything in that family. So this is now the bear family, the Ursidae, okay? And then we've got the genus and the species. Now, the genus of the panda is going to be different to the genus of the polar and the grizzly, so you can get rid of that one. It doesn't belong in the same genus. So the grizzly and the polar, they're quite similar organisms, okay? And then the species, now this is Ursus arctus. So arctus is the species, and the polar bear doesn't belong in that particular species, okay? So that's how we classify organisms. We use these taxonomic groups, and it goes from lots of species all the way down, specialized into one species down there, okay? And then we take genus and species and we put them together in something known as binomial nomenclature, or the binomial system. So here we take the genus, which is Ursus, and the species, which is Arctos, and Ursus arctos becomes the scientific name or the binomial name for the organism, okay? And we've got a few examples down here. Homo sapiens is what we are, genus and species. Genus Homo, sapiens is species. Panthera tigris is for a tiger, genus and species. This one's a rat, that one's a cat, and this one I think is a hamster, okay? Now, you're not actually expected to fill this out from memory. If I fill it out, it's going to look like this. However, what might happen is they might cover up this thing over here, this blue column. And they might ask you, okay, well, what is the class for dog? And you go, domain, kingdom, phylum, class. All right, class, it's Mammalia. Okay, they might ask you, well, what is the scientific name for an oak tree? And you take the genus and the species, you put it together, and you get Quercus robur, which is the genus for oak tree. Okay, they might ask you what the order is for earthworms. So you go domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order. So that's Haplotaxida, and that's all it is. This is the entire lesson, done as short as I can do it. Thank you very much for watching.